Welcome back. Today, we're taking a trip into the world of Star Wars and the story of Starkiller. If you enjoy stories like this and you want more in the future, consider subscribing and tapping the bell to be notified when new stories go live every single week. For now, lay back, relax, and enjoy the story. The rain on Nar Shaddaa didn't fall so much as it seeped from the perpetually dark sky, a greasy mist that coated every surface in a chemical sheen. Below, the city was a chasm of neon and shadow, a hive of countless beings living their lives of quiet or loud desperation. For the man standing on the rain-slicked landing platform, it was just another hunting ground. He was known by a single, brutal name: Starkiller. He was Lord Vader's apprentice, a living weapon honed in secret, a phantom tasked with erasing the last embers of the Jedi Order. His ship, the Rogue Shadow, sat behind him, its engine cooling with the soft hisses that were lost in the city's din. Inside, his pilot Juno Eclipse would be running post-flight checks, her disciplined mind a stark contrast to the chaotic storm of the Force that perpetually churned within Starkiller. He felt her presence through the ship's hull, a steady, calm light in the overwhelming darkness of his own existence. It was a complication he was trained to ignore. His target was a Jedi Master, a veteran of the Clone Wars named the Rahm Kota. The man had gone to ground here, a fool's errand. No one could hide from Vader's reach, especially not when Starkiller was the one reaching. He drew his hood lower, the synthetic fabric doing little to ward off the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. It was the coldness of his purpose. He moved through the Undercity, a ghost in the crowd. The Force guided him, a current pulling him through the squalor. It whispered of the life teeming around him. Fear, greed, hope, love, a symphony of emotions he was meant to be deaf to. But he heard them. He always heard them. He saw a child clutch a worn toy, a vendor haggle over rotten fruit, a pair of lovers steal a moment in the shadowed alley. These were flickers of a life he couldn't comprehend, a universe away from the sterile training rooms and the unending litany of combat drills that had been his entire world. He eventually found Kota in a makeshift militia headquarters, a crumbling cantina reeking of stale ale and ozone. The Jedi Master was old, his eyes clouded with cataracts, but shining with a fire that hadn't been extinguished. He was training a ragtag group of locals, trying to forge them into a weapon against the Empire. It was pitiful, but it was noble. The contradiction angered Starkiller. The confrontation was inevitable. The air crackled. The locals scattered, and the two figures, one cloaked in darkness, the other in faded robes, became the eye of the storm. Lightsabers ignited, one a furious crimson, the other a defiant green. Starkiller fought as he was trained, with an overwhelming sense of aggression, a tidal wave of raw power. He was a hurricane of the Force, tearing the Katina apart, using the environment as a weapon. He felt Vader's approval from across the galaxy, a cold, heavy pressure in his mind.
Good. Unleash your anger. Strike him down.
But Kota was not like the others. He was a general, a strategist, He weathered the storm, his defense economical, his movements precise. He didn't just fight Starkiller, he teased him, prodding him, trying to find the boy beneath the monster. In a lull, the old master looked past the crimson blade and into the eyes of the apprentice. He saw not a Sith, but a slave. The fight ended as it must. Starkiller's raw power overwhelmed the Kota's experience. But as the old Jedi fell, blinded and defeated, he offered no plea for mercy, no curse of defiance. He simply spoke of a future Starkiller couldn't see, a destiny free from the shadow of his master. The words were a poison, a seed of doubt planted in the barren soil of his soul. He left Kota alive, blinded but breathing, a failure he would have to explain to Vader. It was his first secret act of the rebellion, though he didn't yet understand it himself. The punishment for his failure was as expected. Pain was his most constant teacher. Vader's mechanical breathing filled the training room, a rhythmic counterpart to the searing agony of Force lightning coursing through his body. He was reminded of his place, his purpose. He was a tool, and a tool that failed to perform its function would be reforged in fire. His next mission took him to Felucia, a world teeming with vibrant, dangerous life. The target was another Jedi, a former healer named Shaak, who had bent the planet's ecosystem to her will. But this mission felt different. Vader's instructions were not just to eliminate the Jedi, but to break her spirit, to turn her sanctuary into her tomb. He was ordered to poison the ancient abyss from which the planet's life sprang. He watched from a ridge as Imperial walkers lumbered through the alien jungle, their cannons turning iridescent fungi and towering flora into smoldering craters. It was destruction for its own sake, a brutal display of power that served no strategic purpose whatsoever. He felt the planet's life force scream in agony through the Force. It was a chorus of pain that echoed the screams he so often buried within himself. Juno saw the conflict inside of him. From the cockpit of the rogue shadow, she had a clear view of the devastation. She didn't speak it, she wouldn't dare, but he could feel her disapproval, her sorrow. Her quiet strength was becoming a mirror, forcing him to see the monster he was becoming. He found himself thinking less of his master's approval and more of the quiet disappointment in the pilot's eyes. He confronted Shaak at the edge of the Sarlacc pit she had made her sanctum. She was a Togruta, elegant and deadly, and she had fought with the ferocity of a mother defending her home. Their duel was a whirlwind of light and shadows amidst the giant, pulsating floor and the fires that came with the Apprentice. But as they fought, she didn't speak of the Sith or the dark side. She spoke of balance, of life, and of the rage that was consuming him like a disease. She wasn't just fighting him. She was trying to heal him. Eventually, Starkiller defeated her, as he was meant to. But as she fell into the abyss, her final act was not one of defiance, but of release. She became one with the Force, and in that moment, Starkiller felt it. A wave of peace and light so profound it staggered him. It was everything he was not. It was everything he secretly craved. The crack in his soul widened into a chasm. He returned to the rogue shadow not as a triumphant weapon, but as a man haunted by a ghost of what he could be. He looked at his hands, instruments of death, and for the first time, he felt shame. Vader demanded a report. He lied, claiming the planet's energies had been corrupted beyond saving, omitting the Jedi's final transformative act. It was his second secret, his second betrayal. He was no longer just a fist. He was a mind beginning to think for itself. Over time, he started using Imperial intelligence not just to hunt Vader's targets, but to find whispers of those who fought back. He was still the apprentice, but he was now gathering stones for a sling he didn't yet know how to build. The final break was violent and absolute. Vader, ever suspicious, eventually discovered his apprentice's growing independence. He saw the seeds of rebellion not just in Starkiller's actions, but in his heart. The confrontation wasn't a training exercise. It was an execution. On a half-finished space station that would one day be known as the Death Star, Master and Apprentice met for the last time. The rage Starkiller had been taught to harness was now fully on its creator. It was a desperate, passionate fury. He fought not for victory but for retribution. Retribution for a stolen childhood, for a life spent as a slave, for the good people he had been forced to kill. Every swing of his saber was a scream he could never voice. And as he unleashed the full, untamed power of the Force, a power that frightened even him, he ripped panels from the walls, hurled machinery, and called down lightning that made Vader's own dark energies seem pale. But he knew he couldn't win. Vader was more machine than man, a vessel of pure, cold darkness that could not be swayed by passion. But he could hurt him. He could show that his creation, his perfect weapon, had developed a will of its own. He could prove that the boy, Galen Marek, was not entirely dead. In the end, he was broken, cast aside amidst the wreckage of their duel. But as Vader raised his saber for the final blow, an Imperial shuttle arrived. It wasn't an execution squad. It was Juno. She had defied orders, risking everything to save him in this final moment, pulling his broken, beaten body from the station. As he healed, over months and months aboard the Rogue Shadow, the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony of betrayal. He was nothing to Vader. He was nothing to the Emperor. He was a disposable asset. That realization did not extinguish his fire. It reignited it. The rage was still there, but it was no longer wild. It was focused, forged in the crucible of his master's ultimate betrayal. A new purpose emerged. He was not Starkiller, Vader's fist. He was Galen Marek. He remembered Rahm Kota's words about a future he couldn't see, and now he saw it clearly. Over time, he used his knowledge of the Empire, his understanding of its inner workings, to do what no one else could. He reached out to the scattered dissidents he had secretly tracked, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and Garm Bel Iblis. He became the ghost they needed, the impossible weapon turned against his own creators. He wasn't a politician or general, he was an idea, a symbol of hope that even the darkest soul could turn towards the light. His final act was one of pure sacrifice. To save the nascent leaders of the Rebel Alliance from a trap laid by Vader and the Emperor, he faced both Dark Lords at once. There was no hope of survival, no thought of escape. It was simply the last full measure of his redemption. Though he fought valiantly and fought for hope, he ultimately gave his life to a bigger purpose as the Emperor demanded Vader end his life. Galen Marek sacrificed himself and died as the man who had been forged as a weapon of hate, but chose to die as a shield of hope, ensuring that others would live to fight for the dawn he would never see. That's all for this story. If you're still with us, consider checking out another one of our adventures. YouTube should have a couple on screen for you now. And of course, consider subscribing for more calm, weekly stories just like this. Farewell, my wonderful heroes.